Firefly is the source of probably more joy and pain than anything I've done. It was, to me, a new kind of storytelling.
It's this wonderful combination of future and a past.
It basically tells us, this is us in the future. Our problems are the same. We're just more of us spread over more planets.
It was about 9 people looking into the blackness of space and seeing 9 different things. That, to me, is what's interesting. Action!
When you have a Joss Whedon on your payroll, as the studio did, obviously they were looking to try and get another project out of him. And so he, at one of the earlier meetings, said to them, well, I've got this idea that I've always played with of doing this sort of show. And they just were eager to get a show from him. So they said, oh, yes, great, let's do it.
So I wanted to get a show that took the past and the future and put them together by making them feel like the present, by making a show with not only troubles that people could relate to, as opposed to aliens or bumpy foreheads or ambassadors or things that are not part of everyday life, but like getting a job, getting out of trouble, stuff like that was very simple. Put it all in the present and give it a sort of you are here feel.
I got to read the various incarnations of the script, and boy, I thought that looked neat. It was a Western, but it was in space, and there were horses, and there were guns, and there were cool people on a spaceship.
When I delivered Serenity, the 2-hour pilot, the network kind of got cold feet about it. They felt, they didn't want a long sort of story that took its time explaining who everybody was. They wanted to jump in the middle of the action. That was kind of the Fox dictum was, you're in the thick of it, let's go.
The initial results, they made the network nervous, that the men didn't respond as strongly as they thought they would, and that the women responded more strongly.
They wanted a little more humor injected, and particularly in the character of the captain. The idea originally was that he was very closed off, and over the course of the pilot we found out why. And then over the course of the series we saw him, we saw he was a decent man, and we got to see him warm up.
And they said, wow, we only have a certain amount of time to hook the viewers into a new property. We need to do it more quickly.
They wanted to get in with some action, get in with some jokes, and come in right in the middle of an adventure.
But I had 9 characters with, very involved stories and a world nobody had seen before that was culled from all different cultures. So there was just a huge amount of visual and oral and character information for people to absorb in an hour.
Rather than not making the show, we, of course, tried to work with them on that score.
Tim and Joss were very eager to certainly please our partners because they're financing the show.
They told us they needed to see sort of what the first couple episodes would look like. What does this look like as a TV series? I mean, we've seen this pilot. We're still not quite sure what it would be week to week. So in order to convince them to pick up the show, we came up with the story for the train job. And they thought that seemed okay, but really what they wanted to see was a script. And they wanted to see it by Monday. So we had 2 days to write what was, in essence, going to be a new pilot.
We scrambled to make the train job and explain everything in the second episode, which was then the pilot.
And we still wanted them to air Serenity first, because we felt no matter what, this was such a complex, new universe with so many characters that really you needed that Western 2-hour introduction to this world to really understand it. Sadly, the network did not agree, and they aired it later.
A lot of the pressure of being a show that might be canceled at any moment really helps you. It doesn't help your digestion. It doesn't help your marriage. But what it does help is your storytelling, because you go back and you say, what is the most important thing I need to feel? What is the most primal story? What is the thing that is going to show how great this crew is? How funny they are, how brave, how disjointed, whatever it is you need. What do I need? Get primal.
They would break a story and, come run to the set and be like, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And it was just these incredible, Joss and Tim, sort of their minds are just, always going and going and going, and then we get the scripts, and it was just, I mean, they were like gold.
We wouldn't get the first drafts. We'd only get the shooting draft, which is good. It protected us from whining, I guess, and saying, I like that other line. It was nice. I wanted to say that in Chinese.
Joss had a really specific vision in his head of sort of what happened between now and when Firefly is set, and the notion that sort of the only two superpowers that survived were the United States and China.
The idea was your most basic white trash person can speak Chinese. You're the person, with no education who, was the last person you'd expect, speaks Chinese off the bat. And it just gives it a lovely kind of lived-in texture.
As far as the Chinese goes, I resented it.
They just randomly come into my head like Wang Yi, Yiddish.
It wasn't easy at all. Chinese is not exactly, French is easier than Chinese. If it was French, it would be fine, but it was a little difficult, yeah.
I like to think we educated the world by teaching them a little bit of Mandarin.
The writers would be in their room, in their writing room, and they'd come up with really funny things to say if you knew what you were saying in English.
We only did phrases that we didn't need to know what they meant. Like if he shouted, "This way," we know he's saying, "Shut up." And if he goes, blah, 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 we know he's going, "Oh my God, I'm very surprised."
He wouldn't put one-word expletives that you then switch to Chinese, like man, and, was, and then explain, it was these long, and I don't speak Chinese, and I have even trouble ordering at Chinese restaurants.
Every episode, I was making several phone calls to a group of people, and it was always a back and forth. Trying to get the right words.
I did love the fact that you didn't have to bleep anything out, and you could actually say, frog humping, cat sucking pissant in Chinese and not have to worry about the censors going, "Oh, you can't say shit."
For other things, more current slang, like baboon's ass crack per se, I would call my friends who was more up on the current colloquialisms and curse words in China or Taiwan.
We had cassette tapes that we were to listen to get the sound of it right, and most of the time none of us got the sound of it right anyway.
I would sort of hear what it was supposed to sound like, and then I'd hear the actor say it. Right. And I bet there are a lot of people in China going, "What the hell are they saying?"
We wanted a multi-racial sort of mix of people, because our statement was, in the future, there's two superpowers and everybody's mixed. That's why the way people dress are mixed, and he wanted to have that reflected in these people coming together.
My very original concept was a little smaller. I had like 5 characters. And then when I sort of said, okay, Millennium Falcon, yes, Stagecoach, better, I realized, I'm going to be living on this boat. And a lesson I learned from Angel is you really need an ensemble, and especially because I thought of this as more of a drama than an action drama when I first conceived it. When I actually got down to making it, I decided to go from 5 to 9.
When each one of those characters plays ultimately a very important role in the show, it really was incumbent upon Joss and the casting team to find some great actors, and I think we did.
What I said to Joss in our first meeting was, I'm so not this guy. He's tortured, he's bitter, he's hollow, he has no hope, there's nothing lively and wonderful exploding within this man. I kept telling him, I'm not this guy. I'm really not this tortured soul.
Ultimately, 8 of the 9 original cast members stuck. The one that didn't being Rebecca Gayheart, who was the last role cast, the part of Inara. Ultimately, it didn't work out for either one of us, and that led us to discover Morena.
I go in and audition, and basically just stick around for a couple hours, meet Joss, hang out, find out I'm testing the next day, and then start work the day after that. It was so fast, and it was mind-blowing. I remember going down from my network test into the set where everybody was shooting and being like, great, this is where you're working now.
I was a big fan of Westerns growing up, and Warren Oates and Eli Wallach were 2 really kind of down and dirty characters, one from the Wild Bunch, one from the Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and I just thought, boy, it'd be great to play a guy like that, but handsomer.
Everything was a first for me. I'd never gone to a table read with all the other actors and all these people that I'd seen on TV before, and I went and sat with all the other actors and did the first read through of the script, and it came to life, and I was shaking with excitement. It was just, every moment was incredible.
I have kept myself from being exposed to as much science fiction as possible. So I was actually delighted that there were no prosthetics.
The script came in, I heard Joss Whedon was behind it, got excited, read it, got even more excited, and heard that if I were to get the part, I would have to gain 20 pounds. He wanted Kaylee to look like a woman. He didn't want any sort of anorexic looking, young actress type girl that everybody's so used to seeing on TV. He wanted somebody that looked like they enjoyed a cheeseburger once in a while and really embellished in life.
It was old and cantankerous. Our doors didn't quietly open with a nice little how do you do hiss.
It was dirty.
It was very romantic, I think. It was for a first spaceship. It was extremely romantic.
We got such a sense of this was our ride. This was the thing that kept us all together, kept us in the air, kept us flying, kept us working.
When you see the first time that Malcolm Reynolds lays eyes on Serenity, it's a love story right there. He sees it and you see it in his face. He's in love with this, and it's a real love.
The ship, Serenity, is, in a way, it's the 10th character. And it couldn't be more important. It's a character in the sense that, Mal's need for this ship and what it means to him, and also how it makes us feel in a scene, is as important as what the characters are doing. We designed her very carefully. Carrie Meyer, our brilliant production designer, and I went through color charts.
We sort of came up with a color scheme, starting from the engine room right through to the bridge, where we went from very hot, warm tones through to sort of more even tones, to very cold, blue tones up in the bridge. So it got very hot in the back, very cold in the front. Not only did Serenity have a character, but he wanted each space to sort of have its own character as well, which would sort of play into all the different characters in the show.
Everything was done, with that in mind. It's like this room, this is the engine room. Kaylee lives here. Kaylee is about earthiness and warmth and sexuality and optimism. And so we rusted everything up so it was a very warm brown.
Oh my God, girl. It was a great ship. We loved the little details on the ship, just that Kaylee wrote her name out and beautiful little flowers and things above her room. And every place was very specific to what was happening in that room.
Then the dining room with its little floral pattern that was clearly done by Kaylee, and a yellow, again, kind of a warm, but, sort of more diffuse, so that it could lend itself to a lot of the different stuff.
For me, the dinner table, when all 9 of us are sitting there and eating together, were and are always the most special times we were shooting the show.
Natty, I want to hear about the Natty thing.
Inara's shuttle, obviously deep reds and golds and just very lush and very sensuous, because that's, her trade and her character. And also the way she and Mal are with each other is there's, a romantic tension, and when they're in that shuttle together, it's there on the screen, in the set.
What's your game?
The bridge was Alan's. He took it and owned it.
The chair was really comfortable. It could recline. The things came up and down. And whenever we were on the bridge, I got to sit there. It's very different from other shows where the captain always sat in the chair. But the captain didn't know how to fly the ship, and so I always had to stay in the chair, so he was always just over me. There were 3 switches, my magical 3 switches I always hit when anybody told me to do something The first thing I did was hit these 3 switches that have no purpose. It was just like, okay, I'm about to do something, switches. They make good chicky sounds.
I remember meeting Joss for lunch, talking about things. As this is after I'd got the job, of course, and we're just hanging out. And he said, "Would you like to come and see the ship?" I said, "Yes." And we went there, and it was colossal.
It was very important in Serenity to, as much as possible, introduce the ship. And some of it I cut out for length, and some of it is in there. But, you know, the idea of going from place to place to show that, yeah, we did in fact have the entire ship built all the way 190 feet from one end to the other, so that people would really get the sense we're living here.
The upstairs was a continuous set, and the downstairs was a continuous set. They were separated on different stages because, you know, one was above the other. But we also did that because we knew that we'd want to be shooting second units from time to time, and so it was beneficial for us to have the 2 sets separated.
We had this entire structure that was our ship, so it was easy to get a feel for how big it was.
If you were to walk onto the set, you would think this might be a real ship or a real building, because there were stairs, and the stairs led to the next set, which connected to the next set.
I remember the first time I got on that set and I saw this, because it's completely open, the grating, and there are very few railings, and I was just like, I've got to run up. It feels like you're like on air, like you're not stepping on anything. That was really, really hard. I got a little vertigo.
We wanted everything to be completely exposed. We wanted to know that they were just, you know, rigging this thing together with baling twine, and that it barely worked.
And then the effects people made it into what it was as far as what it could do.
Joss, Carrie Meyer, and myself, you know, we sat down to the table and basically talked about the ship and Serenity, and what is Serenity? Where did it come from? How does it fly? What kind of a class ship is it? What's inside of it?
And, you know, he always knew that he wanted it to sort of have, you know, reference you know, the bug, the Firefly bug. I just literally just started, you know, doodling different little ships and little ideas. And
you know, we went into sort of sketch mode, you know, with the idea that Joss had, which was, you know, I think this spaceship should have qualities of a bird, but also qualities of a firefly. So, you know, with this long neck that has the ability to look over a long space, you know, but with like a bigger abdomen that kind of reminded him of this bug-like creature, you know, that when you see it, you know, passing through the space, you know, you could look at it as an insect, you know, like something that annoys the Alliance, which, you know, plays a big role in our show. One of the things we sort of latched onto for the interplanetary travel was this idea of, you know, of a big fusion explosion behind the backside of the spaceship that would propel it inordinately faster than anything that we have on the Earth. That would be interesting, and then we could play with the idea that, you know, it might have a glow which we could use as an exterior light which would allow the ship to look like a firefly. In the early stages of developing Serenity, one of the things that we wanted to do is develop, you know, a way for it to sort of fly through the atmosphere despite its immense size, and also land with some sort of a grace while keeping into continuity with its bird, insect-like design. So that being said, we decided that the ship would have a VTOL capability. VTOL is a kind of air motion that's sort of been employed by the Air Force with the Harrier jet, which basically, you know, consists of these nozzles, these high-powered nozzles that articulate and allow the airships to take off vertically and then switch their apparatus and fly horizontally. We have the feet that would come down just like legs, and they would, you know, ballast the entire weight of the ship, and it would sort of, as it would come to rest, these engines too would sort of come to rest and fold in just like a bird's wings, and that was the idea, that it would sort of have these like action like a bird, it would have this action like an insect, and made it feel more character-like.
There were times when I needed to get prepared for a scene, and all I would do was just walk through the set. I would walk through the set and just take it in, take in all the memories of scenes that we'd done in each room, and remember what it felt like, and and that would be enough inspiration to get me ready to do a scene.
When we weren't shooting, we were always hanging out on the ship. So if we were doing something in the bridge and you needed to stay close for a scene coming up, everybody be hanging out in what was the ship's lounge area.
There was a little nook, the little stairway in Serenity, where I carried Jewel up as we're going up and back to the engine room. I used to go up there and just sit because it was dark. It really was a stairway that led to nowhere, but it was a really quiet place, so I'd go hang out there.
And it was, I think the name of the ship is just extremely appropriate. Everybody found a kind of serenity in the ship.
It gave all of us a huge sense of pride. I mean, it was our ship.
It's a place we all look forward to going to being, and to playing in. Serenity.